to Speaker Mike Johnson, imploring him to spend more money in Ukraine. And what they said is they want to revitalize our defense industrial base. That's the new acronym, DIB, for the MIC, the Military Industrial Complex. And they sent a list of states that would get money when we spend, money on deadly munitions, because they have to be manufactured in Alabama or Ohio or Texas. And so, they're saying the quiet part out loud, that congressmen tend to vote for this stuff because a lot of this federal spending that goes to Ukraine is actually laundered back to the military industrial complex. And in some ways, not very efficiently, but in some ways, it enriches people in their districts and the stockholders, some of whom are congressmen.
But no one ever mentions that we have abetted the killing of an entire generation of Ukrainian men that will not be replaced to fight a war that they cannot win. They literally cannot win. We prevented a peace deal and we extended the war and we killed all these people. And so all the ones running around with their little Ukraine flag pins, they're implicated in that. Has anyone apologized?
No, to support this money, you have to be economically illiterate and morally deficient. Those are both conditions of voting for this.
This is my video update on this Wednesday, midday, December the 6th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with a cancellation. Elensky canceling his video appearance in front of the Senate. So yesterday I talked about how Schumer was going to put to a vote Biden's $106 billion aid package, of which $61 billion is earmarked for Ukraine and for Elensky. And I believe this vote will take place today. And Elensky was supposed to appear in front of Congress, in front of the Senate, and he canceled last minute. He just canceled like that. The BBC writes, Elensky abruptly cancels U.S. Senate briefing amid funding row. Senate leader Chuck Schumer did not explain why Mr. Zelensky was a no-show. The chamber's top Democrat said the Ukrainian president was occupied with a last-minute matter without providing further details. Mr. Zelensky's chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, said earlier on Tuesday there was a big risk of Ukrainian defeat without continued U.S. support. Quote, it will be difficult to keep in the same positions and for the people to really survive, Yermak added in a speech at the U.S. Institute of Peace in Washington, D.C. Mr. Yermak's dire assessment was given just hours before Mr. Zelensky pulled out of a scheduled video conference with U.S. senators to brief them on the war effort. So Elensky's handler, the man behind the curtain, Mr. Yermak, he's in D.C. and he was speaking at the Institute of Peace, the U.S. Institute of Peace, talking about escalation in war at the U.S. Institute of Peace. So a couple of hours before Elensky was scheduled to speak to the Senate, Yermak speaks to this Institute of Peace. He says that if we don't get the money, then we're in a very, very bad position. And I imagine that the people in attendance at this Institute for Peace, they told Yermak, it doesn't look so good. It doesn't look like this time around, during this vote, doesn't look like the 61 billion, the 106 billion, the total package will be approved. And even if it is approved, I believe it then has to go to the House. And the House isn't ready to approve it just yet, even though the Speaker of the House, Mr. Johnson, he said he would approve this type of funding as long as they address the border wall. And that is pretty much what the Republicans in the Senate are saying as well. They want to see some sort of package for the southern border, a substantial package addressing the southern border. And then it looks like they're all in on 61 billion for Project Ukraine or whatever the amount is going to be. But Yermak probably got the word that this time around it's not going to happen. He then probably called Elensky and said, there is no need to appear to the Senate. Don't waste your time. It's not going to pass. It's not going to go through. Either that happened, or another scenario to explain Elensky's cancellation, last-minute cancellation, is that Elensky is acting like a spoiled actor. That's a possible explanation. Elensky's probably saying, you know what? You don't want to give me the money? Well, no money, no honey. No money, no honey, Mr. Schumer, U.S. Senate. I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to grace you with my video presence if I don't see any money coming to Project Ukraine. And so this is a way for Elensky to kind of, I guess it's kind of like threatening the U.S., threatening the Biden White House by saying, you know, I'm not going to speak in front of the Senate. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to fight this conflict, and we're going to lose, and it's going to be on your head. I imagine that's the type of logic, like a spoiled kid. You know, a spoiled kid that doesn't get his way. He throws a tantrum, and you know, he decides to crash daddy's car. You know, just crash it into the wall because he hasn't been allowed to take the car out, like a spoiled teenager. You can't use our car tonight, son. And so the spoiled teenager says, oh yeah? Well, I'm just going to take the keys and just crash the car, you know? Something like that. I imagine this could be some sort of tantrum, some sort of idea in Elensky's head that he can exert leverage over the collective West by not appearing, by not giving speeches, by not stepping down, by not calling elections, canceling elections, and continuing to fight what is going to be a losing war. And when it all collapses, all of the blame, or he may think that all of the blame will fall on the Biden White House and the European Union. And Elensky's probably thinking, well, they don't want to take the blame, so that's my leverage. That's my leverage. They want to push me aside. Well, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm not speaking. I'm going to continue to send troops into the Russian traps, into the Russian grinder, and we'll see how they like it when it all collapses. I can see that type of destructive attitude going on in Elensky's mind. A spoiled actor. So we'll see if they do vote this package through. I doubt it. I think everyone understands this won't be voted through, but who knows? Maybe they will vote it through. Maybe the Senate will vote it. But it doesn't look too good. And I imagine they told Zelensky, Yermak told Zelensky, no need to waste your time. No need to waste your time. So yeah, that's the update there. The BBC says that the United States, well, they interviewed Matt Rosendahl of Montana, who said the United States is going to run in excess of a $2.5 trillion deficit this year. Republican Congressman Rosendahl of Montana told the BBC. So why should the people of the United States borrow money from China to give it up to Ukraine? That is not in our best interests. In a possible attempt to shore up congressional support, the White House has been pitching additional Ukrainian aid in Ukraine, as well as national security terms. In her letter to Congress, Ms. Young noted that the requested funds would be used to manufacture armaments at factories located across the country. We will modernize vital munitions and equipment like javelins made in Alabama, guided multiple launch rocket systems made in West Virginia, Arkansas, and Texas, and artillery shells made in Pennsylvania, Arkansas, and Iowa, and many other states. Ms. Young writes. I talked about this yesterday. Basically, give the $61 billion to Ukraine because we're going to make weapons in the United States, and we're talking about a lot of jobs. We're going to create a lot of jobs in in Arkansas and Iowa and Texas and Virginia and Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. All these jobs are going to be created in order to fund Project Ukraine, to create weapons for Project Ukraine. That's the sales pitch from the Biden White House to the Senate and to the senators from these states. That's the sales pitch. Approve it, and there's going to be all kinds of money pouring into your states in order to produce weapons, to build factories and stuff like that. Why doesn't the Senate just say, you know, we're not going to give any money to Elensky because it gets stolen, it's not audited, it's corrupt, but we'll give $60 billion to the military-industrial complex because we just want to. I mean, I think that's a more honest approach, isn't it? Rather than saying, oh, you know, we're going to fund Project Ukraine, and we're going to give this money to Project Ukraine. So like 60 billion will go to Project Ukraine, but 50 billion will go to the military-industrial complex, which means the MIC companies, and the MIC companies, they filter some of that money down to the politicians, and then 10 billion of that 60 billion, 10% for the big guy, and then Zelensky will take his cut, and all the people around Zelensky will take their cut, and NATO, they'll take their cut as well. So, you know, why deal with all of that? Why deal with all that? Just say, you know, here's 50 billion. Here's 50 billion to the MIC companies. Just a straight up deal, a transparent, straight up deal. We're just going to make weapons. Why? Because Russia demilitarized us. So now we're going to make weapons. Are they going to go to Ukraine? They'll go here, they'll go there. They'll go a little bit everywhere. The bottom line is we're just going to give money to the military-industrial complex. There's going to be no 10% for the big guy, no cut for Elensky, none of that stuff. That would be a more straight up and honest approach. But I love the quote from Mr. Rosendale. Why should the people of the United States borrow money from China to give it up to Ukraine? This is not in our best interests. Yeah, I mean, you know, borrow money from China and give it to the military-industrial complex. I mean, you know, do that. Unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable. So Tucker Carlson, he had Thomas Massey from Kentucky on his Twitter X show yesterday, and there was an interesting interview. Massey, he confirmed, he actually said that there was a coup in Ukraine in 2014. Those were the words that he used. The U.S. government overthrew the democratically elected government in Ukraine in 2014. He also said that Congress is clueless on Ukraine. He didn't use those words, but he basically said that what happens is when Congress is briefed before a big vote, like 61 billion to Ukraine, 106 billion in this package. When they're briefed, it's basically the deep state, the NSA. They come into a room. All of the senators, all of the congressmen, congresspeople, they all enter the room. They sit down. He said it's just propaganda. They just throw out some propaganda and they make the case for 61 billion to Ukraine because they say Ukraine is winning and 50% of the territory has been captured from the Russians. Siege of Kiev, Kherson, Kharkiv counteroffensive, the Zaporozhye Avenger, the goat of Kiev that blew himself up, and he took 20 Russian soldiers with him. All this nonsense, he says, is what I'm embellishing it, but he says that's basically what happens. They just come in, it's all propaganda, and it's all about convincing Congress to just approve the money. But they have no real idea as to the truth as to what's happening. That's basically what he said, which was an interesting revelation from Massey. And then Tucker asked Massey about the money. If it is going to be approved, that's pretty much what he asked Massey. And Massey's like, you know, it's going to get approved. There's going to be money that's going to be sent. Because he said that the momentum is it's just there. He's like, it's hard. I mean, when I listened to him, I was thinking, you know, he's basically saying it's money that eventually is going to go to the campaigns and into the pockets of the politicians anyway, and the momentum is already just too great. There's just too much momentum for the U.S. to stop. No reverse gear. No reverse gear is what he wanted to say, and it makes sense. Why wouldn't they approve money that essentially goes to themselves in one form or another, or to their campaign donors? So he's like, yeah, the money eventually will get approved, and may not happen now, but it'll happen, say, in January, February. It's not going to make a difference as far as the war is concerned. It's not going to make one difference. Maybe it'll prolong, as Putin said, it'll prolong the agony of Ukraine. That's what Putin said. But, no need to worry if you're Ukraine and you're Elensky about weapons and ammunition, because Finland announced that they're going to start producing shells. That is what Finland said yesterday. They said, and I quote, "We have finalized negotiations on how Finland will continue to increase its munition production to arm Ukraine," Finnish Defense Minister Häkkänen told the Iltalehti newspaper. So no need to worry if you're Elensky. Finland is going to produce the millions of shells that you need in order to continue to fight a losing war. And they're not going to be able to produce millions of shells, that's for sure. But they do need millions of shells. The Ukraine military needs millions of shells. Actually, Zelensky, rumor has it that Zelensky told Austin, if you believe that Zelensky is still around, when Austin was in Kiev, rumor has it that Zelensky told Austin, in order to beat the Russians, what we need are 17 million shells and $400 billion in aid. That's it. In order to beat the Russians, we need all the shells on the planet times 2 plus 400 billion, 61 billion. Give us 400 billion, and you might as well throw in a million-man army, and then we'll beat the Russians and the Death Star. The Death Star. We need the Death Star. then we'll defeat the Russians. Unbelievable stuff, man. Unbelievable stuff. I don't know how true this is. Maybe it's true. Maybe Zelensky did say this, but maybe this has been put out to the media by Elensky in order to paint Zelensky as some sort of maniac, as some guy who's completely out of touch with reality by asking for 17 million shells. That's a possibility as well. So it could be a type of smear towards Zelensky. Or maybe Zelensky, if you believe he exists, maybe Zelensky did tell Austin that he needs all of this stuff in order to defeat the Russians. And even if he got 17 million shells and 400 billion and the million-man army and the Death Star, I still don't think they would beat the Russians. I still think they would lose. But the Z versus Z row, the fight between Elensky and Zelensky, Politico, they ran an article with the title, "Ukraine's Tensions at the Top Spill into the Open." The Kremlin is pouncing on rumors of a rivalry between Elensky and army boss Zelensky. There's a grain of truth in the propaganda. So this is an article which tries to explain the fight, the very public and open fights between Elensky and Zelensky. And it basically comes down to the conclusion, Politico makes the conclusion, after interviewing a bunch of Ukrainian officials, that it's all Putin's fault. The Putin has created this fight, or at least he's amplified this fight. That's basically the conclusion that they come up with. Big surprise there. The Putin is to blame. It's always the Putin. So this is the Temple of Zeus, the archaeological site of Olympian Zeus. This right here, and it's right down from the Acropolis. Not far away from the Acropolis. You need a ticket to enter. In the summer, I believe the ticket is €8, but now in the winter, it's reduced rate and it's €4. So very accessible to come to this archaeological site. And it's nice, very nice. I wonder what this looked like back in the day. But it was beautiful. So they blame it on Putin, but they try to say, well, it's all Putin's fault. But Putin, he's the one that's amplifying this argument, this dispute between Zelensky and Zelensky. The Kremlin, they're making it seem like it's a much bigger deal than it really is. But you know how you know that Politico understands that this is a big deal? Because they say there's a grain of truth in the propaganda. That's how you know that this is serious. Whenever the collective West media is like, well, it's a little true. There's a little bit of truth in that. That's when you know there's a lot of truth in that. In other words, there's a grain of truth in this propaganda. It's Politico saying that there's a big fight, a big power struggle going on between Elensky and Zelensky. That's how you know that this is a serious, serious dispute going on. And Arestovich, who is trying to position himself, I believe, he's trying to position himself as a possible president post Elensky once all the fighting finishes and concludes. Arestovich is trying to position himself as president, or at least someone very high up in a possible new government. Who knows? Maybe Zelensky will win this fight. Maybe Elensky will remain in power. It remains to be seen. But Arestovich, he's talking a lot of smack against Elensky. We know that Arestovich would like to see Elensky gone. They used to be best friends. Now they're enemies. And Arestovich, he said in an interview the other day that Ukraine, they chose poorly when this whole thing started, when the special military operation got underway, and even before, the whole talk about Ukraine entering NATO, and then the Munich Security Conference, where Ukraine was running around, where Zelensky was running around Munich with Schultz and Kamala Harris and Ursula, talking about how he's going to get nuclear weapons. Arestovich was like, we messed up. We messed up. He actually said that the conflict between globalists and realists, Ukraine bet on the wrong side. That is actually what Arestovich said. The conflict between globalists and realists, Ukraine bet on the globalists instead of going with the realists. Quite an admission from Arestovich. But always keep in mind, Arestovich, he has an angle. He has an angle in all of this. He wants power. And Newsweek is running with propaganda about Avdiivka. So you're getting close to Avdiivka completely collapsing and the Russians capturing Avdiivka, when the collective West media runs propaganda pieces like this one. Russia loses over 9,000 troops to capture Ukraine wasteland. And we talked about this on the Duran, me and Alexander. And Alexander was like, with everything going on with this slow motion, or maybe fast motion, this slow motion collapse of this collapse in general of the Zelensky regime and the front line, expect the usual stories to come out from the collective West media. Stories like what happened in Bakhmut. Bakhmut was useless. It wasn't very strategic. It held little strategic value. Oh, those incompetent, dumb Russians. They're fighting for a wasteland in Bakhmut. And there's no strategic value in Bakhmut. It's empty anyway. There's no people there anyway. And Russian losses are at 2 million. Those are the stories that we heard about Bakhmut. And they're just recycling them now for Avdiivka. And that's how you're getting close to the end for the fight in Avdiivka, right? Siege of Kiev and Kherson counteroffensive and Bakhmut holds no strategic value, and Wagner has lost 200,000 men, and Putin is suffering from 3 heart attacks and a bum knee, and all of this stuff. Well, they're recycling it once more for Avdiivka. Russian losses at 9,000, and it's a wasteland. That's what this article from Newsweek is saying. It's useless to fight for Avdiivka. It holds 0 value. No value at all. So we don't even know why the Russians are fighting for it. Well, if it's such a wasteland, I would ask Newsweek. And if it holds zero value, why is Ukraine trying to hold on to it as well? Why is Ukraine sending so many soldiers into the Russian artillery in order to hold on to it? And if it holds zero value, then why does Ukraine, or why did Ukraine, launch missiles from Avdiivka into Donetsk city, into the civilian population in Donetsk city, if the city has zero value to the Russians? If it wasn't doing anything, and there was no people in Avdiivka and no use to capture Avdiivka, well then why was it used over the last 8-9 years in order to terrorize the people of Donetsk city? I mean, anyway, it's just nonsense. It's just all nonsense. The situation is awful for the Ukraine military and the collective West media. They're trying to cover it up as best they can, but I wonder who's actually buying this nonsense. We had a Ukraine party MP, actually part of Elensky's servant of the people or for the people party. She posted on Facebook, Mariana Bezuglaya. She posted on Facebook that it's the duty of women to go to the front lines. That's what she said. I think today or yesterday was like the national day, Ukraine's national day of volunteers or volunteering. And she posted on Facebook, this parliament member, the duty of the state is to provide everything that's needed. The duty of the citizens is to pay taxes for it. The best volunteering today is to join the armed forces of Ukraine. The people are the state, as the people, so the state. And then an hour later, she got a whole bunch of comments for what she posted on Facebook. And Bezuglaya doubled down by saying, "Dear mobilized servicemen, do you want new people to come to your unit to strengthen you, to give you a rest? That's why I said the best volunteering for 2024 is to join the AFU. This also applies to women. The best thing that Ukrainian citizens can do, including women, is to go to the front lines." That's coming from a Ukrainian MP. Miss Mariana, I think Mariana is her first name. You go first, Mariana. You go first. If it's the best thing that a citizen can do, you're also a citizen. You first, and then others can follow. We have a German MP, someone who's with the CDU MP Roderick Kleiswetter, who told Die Welt on Monday that all of the Ukrainian men who have fled to Germany, they can go back to Ukraine and go to the front line. He basically said that Elensky's looking for soldiers. He doesn't have any soldiers. Well, Germany has hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men, and he's like, let's send them back to Ukraine. Very nice statement from this German MP, huh? Incredible, huh? And I thought Germany's supposed to be Ukraine's ally, a friend of the Ukrainian people, at least. I thought Germany was a friend of the Ukrainian people. And now this German MP is saying, leave Germany and just go to the front line. Go and fight on the front line. Keep Project Ukraine going for a little bit longer. Right? That's what he's saying. Well, you know, the German defense minister, Mr. Pistorius, Boris Pistorius, he said that that Germany is going to support Project Ukraine, absolutely. But if you thought that Germany was in some sort of an alliance, they had some sort of bond with the Zelensky regime or with Ukraine, forget about it, he said. He said, we're not in an alliance with Ukraine, not at all. We are doing what we can, said Pistorius. The same applies to almost all other allies and partners, but Germany is not an ally of Ukraine and therefore is not a part of any alliance. Wow, quite a statement from Pistorius. I thought they were like hugging each other and best of buddies, right? Every time they saw Elensky, they're hugging and they're kissing, and Russia's collapsing, and Putin is falling apart, and the Russian economy's in tatters. I thought everything was going great, and they were buddies, right? Ukraine and Germany, simpatico. They were in this thing together till the very end. Now it's like, get the German men, send them to the front line, and we have no. What are you talking about? He's our friend. What are you talking about? Zelensky's our friend. Alliance? There's no alliance with Ukraine. What are you talking about? I never even liked them. That's what Pistorius is saying. I never even liked them. Yeah, we gave them weapons and money, but we had to. We were just doing it because it was the right thing to do. But nah, they're not our friend. Not at all. Unbelievable stuff. So today in Ukraine is the day of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. And to commemorate the day, how do I know this? How do I know that today is the day of the Ukrainian Armed Forces? Well, we have a tweet saying as much from Visegrad 24. And accompanying this tweet is a fearless Elensky doing a walk and talk. In much the same way that I walk around and talk about the news, well, Elensky decided, that Alex guy that walks around and talks, I'll do that. And so he took his camera and he started to walk the streets of Kiev. No joke. No joke. This is from Visegrad 24. Elensky is fearless. Today is the day of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Elensky records a video paying tribute to his soldiers while out walking the streets of Kiev. He meets and greets 3 people passing by. Putin, spending most of his time in the bunker, would never, ... Well, Putin is actually, to be fair, Putin is in the UAE, and he's going to go to Saudi Arabia, and then tomorrow you have the president of Iran visiting Moscow. Putin's a pretty busy guy, and I think if Putin walked around the streets of Moscow, he would be like mobbed with loving and adoring crowds of people. So, I don't think that it's possible, given Putin's approval ratings and his rock star persona. I don't think it's possible for Putin to go out onto the streets. I don't think that would be possible. But Elensky, well, he greeted 3 people. He greeted 3 people walking around the streets of Kiev. Oh, unbelievable. So Elensky's doing a walk and talk now. All right, Elensky. Yeah, I like these walks and talks that Alex does. This is good fun. Maybe this will get me more money. He's greeted by 3 people, they say, passing by. This is such nonsense, man. 3 people walking around. Hey, Mr. President. Hey, hello. I'm doing walk and talk video. Okay. And Putin in his bunker. They say Putin is in his bunker the very day that Putin lands in UAE, and then he's off to Saudi Arabia. They talk about Putin being in his bunker. Just yesterday, Putin was greeting ambassadors, like new ambassadors to Russia. I mean, everyone was reporting on it. Putin in front of all the ambassadors, accepting their credentials, the new ambassadors to Russia. And they're like, he's in his bunker. Oh boy. Yeah, Putin's gonna meet with the UAE and with Saudi Arabia, with MBS. They're gonna talk BRICS. They're gonna talk OPEC and oil, and they're gonna talk about the Middle East. So Putin has a busy couple of days ahead of him. And the EU, the EU officials, they're in China. Michel, Borrell, and von der Leyen. They arrived in Beijing today, and tomorrow they're going to be meeting with Xi Jinping. And according to The Guardian, the EU is to tell China that its 400 billion euro trade deficit is not sustainable long term, amid fears that it will flood the bloc with subsidized electric cars, solar panels, and medical devices, threatening European manufacturing jobs. So yeah, Wang Yi, the Chinese, I think he's foreign minister now again. He wasn't foreign minister, and now he's back at foreign minister. He's like, I hope that we can cooperate with the European Union. I'm looking forward to a constructive dialogue and to increasing our trade and bettering our relationship. That was what Wang Yi said. Well, that's what China said. What the European Union says is, we're going to China. We're going to tell you that our trade is not sustainable unless you guys shape up, unless you guys do as we do. And they're also going to be in China to tell the Chinese to stop helping Russia in Ukraine. Otherwise, the EU is going to sanction 13 Chinese companies. So Chinese officials are all about cooperation and let's talk and let's solve our differences and build a better future. The EU, we're coming to China to lecture you. We're traveling to your country as your guests in order to deliver ultimatums. And Ursula, she said, with regards to the trade imbalance, she said, we have tools to protect our market, von der Leyen told reporters, adding that EU countries prefer to have negotiated solutions. So if you don't do as we're telling you to do, China, if you don't do as we tell you to do, we have tools. Remember von der Leyen when Meloni was going to be elected as Prime Minister of Italy, and they asked her, are you afraid about Meloni becoming Prime Minister of Italy? Von der Leyen said, we have tools. We have tools to deal with Meloni. They did. They did use those tools to deal with Meloni, but with China, I don't know. I don't know if those tools are going to work on Xi Jinping, Ms. von der Leyen. So let's do one more story, a quick story. Has to do with Israel and the war in Gaza. And this is coming from Axios. This was a pretty big story that Axios reported on yesterday, which is that the U.S. is imposing a visa ban on Israeli settlers who attacked Palestinians. The U.S. State Department on Tuesday announced it has imposed sanctions on several dozen Israeli settlers believed to be involved in attacks against Palestinians, banning them from traveling to the U.S. So these are settlers. This is the West Bank that we're talking about, actually, not even Gaza. And the Biden White House, they're sanctioning them, but it's just travel. It's a travel sanction. They won't be able to travel to the United States. And actually, when you read the story from Axios and other reporting on this story, you come to realize that they're not only sanctioning Israelis, but they're actually sanctioning some Palestinians as well, who attacked Israeli settlers. So it's kind of both sides are being sanctioned, meaning that they won't be able to travel to the United States. But it's an interesting move from the Biden White House. Perhaps they're trying to apply whatever pressure they can to Netanyahu in order to get Netanyahu to do as the U.S. tells him to do with regards to this conflict, to this war in Israel and in Gaza. And the New York Times is even reporting that yesterday they reported that Netanyahu's corruption trial is going to resume. So the corruption trial, according to the New York Times, was put on hold after the October 7th attack, but it's starting up again. And so this is Netanyahu's, I guess you could say, his dilemma, but his motivation for pushing this conflict and remaining in power. Because if the war comes to an end, if it comes to an extended peace or an extended ceasefire, then judging by Netanyahu's approval numbers, he'd be gone. He'd be out. And once he's out, he's at risk of being put in prison. But it looks like the trial that was postponed is now starting up again. So I don't know, maybe, just maybe, the Biden White House is trying to put some pressure on the Netanyahu administration, perhaps, in order to do things the way they want them done. That's basically what this is all about. The Biden White House, they want Netanyahu to do as he's being told by Blinken and by Sullivan and Bidenopolis, Greece's favorite son. So that was a big story, an interesting story to discuss. And since we're on Biden, he can start our Clown World segment. Maybe this is a pre-Clown World. Biden said yesterday at a campaign fundraiser in Massachusetts, if Trump wasn't running, I'm not sure I'd be running, but we cannot let him win. That is what Biden said yesterday. In other words, Biden is going to run again for president of the United States in order to save America from the evil orange man, Bidenopolis, an American hero. Yep, that's right, America. Biden is going to run for president again, not because he wants to, but he has to do it in order to prevent the orange man from winning. That Biden, always thinking about other people, always thinking about the good of the country, always thinking about the good of America, right? Very windy today, by the way. So we'll see how the audio turns out. I have my windshield on my mic on today, so I think we'll be good with the audio. And let's do a final Clown World, and we will leave this beautiful site. And Kerry at the COP28, Biden's climate czar, he was speaking at the COP28. I think this was the COP28 where he was speaking on a panel about climate and stuff like that, because Kerry is the climate czar. And as he was speaking, as he was making comments, the audio caught a little bit of gas coming out of Kerry. Not like LNG or natural gas, but natural gas. Yeah, they got some natural gas coming out of the climate czar. At least that's what it sounds like. Like I don't know. Maybe this is AI. Maybe this is AI. Maybe this is not real. But everyone's saying this is like legit audio from Kerry's panel discussion at this event.
Those things that are killing people on a daily basis. And the reality is that the climate crisis.
Kerry talking about gas while emitting gas, natural gas. So that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on ODYSEE, Rumble, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and I was going to touch this, to be honest. Rockfin and Twitter X, and go to the Duran shop. Use the code TheDuran20. Get 20% off all merch. Take care.